for another round of Brandy, candid conversations over cocktails about all things brand, with your hosts, Reilly Newman and Scott Saunders, the brand developers behind Motif Brands.
Welcome back to another round of Brandy. Scott and I are talking about something that is always kind of paramount when we talk about brands and the importance of them, is that really it comes down to a brand being salient. And so it's an odd word, and you may only hear it, in certain books and things. So first I want to start with kind of summarizing what salience is. What does it mean to be salient? Scott, how would you...
It means to be prominent. It means to stand out.
Yeah.
I feel like people with their brands and particularly with their marketing, everybody's shouting. Everyone's trying to look over at me. See, look at me. Look at buy from me.
Yeah.
It's a very aggressive market space for any business. No matter what you do, it's a crowded space, and so everyone's vying for attention, and it creates a lot of white noise.
Yeah.
And the biggest issue is that the attention span is very, very small of the audience because they are in autopilot throughout their day.
Americans have very long attention span. But I think that's part of the problem, though, is that the internet, digital, businesses going to digital, everyone being digital, it's increased the accessibility to market and beat the drum and make some noise as a business to get attention. And that's great. That's a great thing that happened, because it gives the small guys a chance, and of course the big corporations, they get to do it and they have the budgets and everything. But to Scott's point, it's like now everyone's making so much darn noise that now when you do make noise that just blends in with everyone else, you just become the average of that. Yeah. And that attention is cheap. Very, very, very cheap. And like Scott mentioned, is like the attention span is now so tiny, is that thanks to even like the scrolling effect from TikTok and Instagram now with Reels, it's like people, if you don't get their attention in like half a second, they're gone.
Yeah. And
now they've essentially been conditioned that way. And now that's being applied to your business as well. So what do you do? How do you actually beat that? And it reminds me of what like Seth Godin, who's a famous marketer, author, writer. He always talk about, one of his books is called Purple Cow. And essentially it's like, yeah, you see cows all the time. I think he grew up kind of in the farmland, but really you'd go, but if you saw a purple cow, that's something that you'd tell your friend about. That's something that you would go out and be like, oh wow, you wouldn't, like, I saw a purple cow today. Like it's something so odd. And of course, that's attention to the nth degree, where you see something so off the wall or something so kind of that your brain does kind of highlight for you within your day that you do tell others about it. And that's one way where attention gets increased in that way. But with salience, like Scott was saying about prominence, it's like when you see something or interact with a brand or maybe a marketing campaign where something just connects with you and resonates on a certain note, that it not only captures your attention, but it actually, your brain, kind of pauses on it and takes a moment and actually highlights it. It goes back and it goes, okay, this is important, wake up brain, pay attention to this. This is important.
You brought up a good point, because the thing with salience is that, and we're talking about with salience and brand, is that the component of salience is actually it comes from the viewer, it comes from the audience, and that is fleeting, because it's what is important to them at the time is not going to be the same thing. Their importance and value shift. They're always changing. If I'm extremely hungry, if I skip breakfast and skip lunch and it's like, oh my gosh, it's 4:00, I'm famished. Yeah. Hunger is a high importance to me, and what I eat, where I eat, what are my food options, that's what my brain is focused on. Great example is if you're a business and say you sell cuisine and you create this incredible, a foodie would just drool over the plate, the way the food is, the way it's presented, the way it's plated, everything would speak to a foodie or somebody that's interested in food. And you have people passing by looking at it. Now, your plate is screaming, hey, I am the ultimate of plating, right? But the importance is that it's coming from the viewer, and they're looking at it. And if those people are either not hungry, if they're feeling nauseous, if they're in a hurry and they're so focused on anything else but food, they're going to pass right by. But for someone that is a foodie, that is thinking about food and hungry, all of a sudden that...
So it's like the audience projects that onto the offering.
What we're talking about is not self-proclaimed importance by a brand. What we're talking about is the salience of a brand is not what the brand does. It's the salient component of the brand being important is coming from the audience because it is aligning with the brand. So, but the brand, because what's important and what's valuable at the time is ever changing with the audience, it's of the brand's responsibility to pivot, to have a pulse on what's going on with their primary audience, and adjust to remain salient with the audience, to remain important, to remain prominent.
Yeah, and I feel like there's almost like these two levels to it where you have like macro salience, where that goes into how someone views the world, how they self-identify, whether I'm a fitness person, or I love the outdoors, or I love eating organic food, or I eat healthy, right? There's like these bigger identities where then they see things that stand out to them based off of that kind of identification and their point of view on the world, where, oh, they appreciate these, quality materials, or they appreciate things made in the USA or something.
Yeah.
Then you have these, like Scott's saying, where you have these situational kind of markets of salience where, oh, I'm really hungry right now, or I'm looking for a trip or a getaway, or I need this, or I need I don't know, something of urgent, right? Of a plumber or something. Yeah. You have these more quick moving areas where something can be salient to the person, but that does also kind of piggyback off of that larger identity and point of view, where someone, if they are hungry, they may not look for fast food, but they may look for something that has those options like sweet greens or something like that, where they have, organic greens and something available that also still aligns with their point of view and their narrative of how they see the world. And so the brand is not only being, perceived by the audience, but like Scott said, the salience is being determined by the buyer as well. The
buyers and their needs, and that a great example of how it could shift that came to mind is that I was in a situation where we were out of town. We were going to a wedding, and our youngest son, who I think was like 4 or 5 at the time, was giving me the ring bearer. And we got there and we realized that we had left his jacket, his little suit jacket, black suit jacket, 3 hours away, and we didn't have time to go and get it and come back. So we had like 2 hours to spare. So I went out frantically trying to find a little suit jacket for him. It wasn't about value. I wasn't shopping that. It could have been 10 times what it normally would have cost. I would have paid that because my needs and what was valuable at the time was I had kind of an emergency need, right? Immediately my shift went from value to accessibility. Because now if I quickly went online, there's 2 stores in town within half hour from here, and one's the same jacket, but it's $80 more. Well, okay, then I might go to the other place, right? But accessibility, like if there was only one supplier, boom, I would have paid anything. So a great example of just how the audience, you think you know your audience, but also come at it from going, does my product or service also provide a need to someone outside of the normal? And can I make my brand more accessible or visibly, right, to them so that their salience connects with my brand?
Right. And what's interesting about that example is that you were 2 kinds of shoppers, because you probably bought that suit for your son months ahead.
Oh, yeah.
And in that state, you were totally different minded, totally different salience, totally different situation. And then the same, human is then a totally different consumer type in a totally different market going, I need this right away, or I'm in a more urgent state.
I'm in a bind.
With totally different, kind of hierarchy of needs. And I think that's where, when you do look at your business and going, okay, you can't just sum up your audience as a demographic, because demographics are averages. And I just don't see averages having a salient kind of mindset. They can't find something salient because you're dealing with a very broad stroke. There could be generalities. There could be kind of what you call it almost like stereotypes probably. But when you look at the actual situations in a market, then you start understanding the salience of what someone wants there. And Scott and I were talking about a really relevant example of this as of recent is like the whole revitalization of the dollar menu of McDonald's. I think Jack in the Box rolled theirs out, and there's been other ones that have been going after the dollar menu because inflation's so high, is that now people are not choosing to eat out anymore because it's too expensive. So then these brands are having to pivot and adjust to the situation.
All right. There's people that I walk in and go, hey, I'm going to order from McDonald's, but I already know I want a Big Mac, or I want this, and this, and that's how I'm going to shop. And if the price have gone up, I don't care. But then there's other people that, like you said, they're very budget conscious. So they're being drawn to how that brand is extending itself through presenting the same menu items, but grouping them under the dollar menu.
Yeah.
And so that they can look at that and go, okay, this is easier now. It's recognizing what's important to the audience, and the business is adapting to both, not making one or the other, right?
Yeah.
But also providing an avenue for the customer, if they want, to be able to shop by, how much they're spending.
Yeah, and I like that it, right off the bat, the magic of it is that it reframes. Instead of going, oh, I'm buying, like you said, a Big Mac, or I'm buying fries. Now, what am I getting for $1? The dollar is already determined on a dollar menu. It just depends on how many of those, you're going to be handing over. But you go, okay, for $1, I get this, and that. Or for $1, I can get this. And so it's flipped the entire kind of transaction in that way, where the consumer is now fully aware of, this is my cap. Now I'm trying to maximize that dollar.
Yeah.
And, you've seen a response in multiple brands doing this. But the most interesting one that kind of rolled out, I think it was last week, is Taco Bell. And they introduced it as, I think it's like pay what you want or something like that. And what's cool about it is that you can set your budget, whether it's $5, $10.
And this is in the app, right?
Yeah, it's all in the app. So you can set, I have a $20 budget or a $15 budget. And then it's going to suggest different combinations of items on the menu that then can fit within that budget. And so again, you can see that they not only are reversing that transaction like the dollar menu does, where they're reframing it and going, okay, this is how much you can get for $5. Boom. It's already showing that. And you're talking about the budget and maximizing that. But now they've actually increased that, because really, like with the dollar menu at McDonald's, most people are going to have to order multiple things off the dollar menu to actually be somewhat full.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, in a way, it's kind of like what people would do with when they would they'd offer all the menu items, but when they started grouping them as like combo packs, so like, oh, you can get the number 2 combo pack, number 3 combo pack. And so it's sometimes grouping your products and services allows to, based on what the customer's shift might be. Another thing too that a brand can do is they can project. Again, salience can come from an audience saying, this is important to me. Mm-hmm. And the brand saying, oh yes, I agree. That's also important to me. That is salient connection of a brand too. Again, it's being driven by what's important to the customer and the audience. But if it is, for instance, if your audience are cat lovers and the brand says, man, we love cats too, 25% of all of our proceeds go to this feline placement or whatever it is, right? Yeah. If it's a local business, right, and you've got a local community, they're leaning into the audience's saliency for cats by also aligning themselves as a brand with that thing that is important. So that the salience may not be direct; it could be indirect, and the brand can capitalize on that if they understand. And the better you understand your audience, the better you're going to understand what is important to them.
Yeah,
right.
Would you say that the difference of like salience versus values? I think values almost to me come together to then deem something salient.
I think I see it as values are permanent. Values are long-standing, right? What is core to me is my values as a person. That doesn't fleet. That's pretty much kind of how I'm wired, right? What to the core, what I truly value, right? That's going to be, if it does change, it's going to be slow and over time.
Yeah, and
right?
I feel like it's the values, point of view, how those larger things are kind of framed. There can still be prominence in that, and kind of like I was saying, is like almost like that macro salience where it's a slower moving kind of cog or like vessel, and then you have these more situational, quick moving, and like we even mentioned earlier when Scott and I were talking about how even in someone's life you do have different stages you enter, and whether that is when you're single, and then you're a couple, you have to start shopping differently, you're thinking differently, you have different needs and importance, and then when you have kids, it changes everything, and then you have a house, and you have different levels of importance for different things. And even that's like, okay, like I personally, I wasn't thinking about life insurance before, I had a family. So that alone changes that dynamic where you start thinking like, oh yeah, it isn't just me anymore. And your priorities change. And so then different things start to get highlighted differently, and brands can play into that. They can understand that. And when a brand, let's say, brand X or whatever, is doing a marketing campaign that was speaking to me in that moment of, they could have had a whole campaign just around that of when you realize it's not just you or something like that. And then that whole awakening and that mindset shift. And then they're, lending that helping hand of going, hey, we can help you make that transition, right? That would have been something of salience to me where it would have been like, wow, they get me, right? I do care because they get me, so they care.
And that's where brands like even like with, like a brand like with an REI store is someone like, hey, if I need to get something camping and I want to get quality, I'll go there. But I'm not an REI. I'm not like super outdoorsy person. Then you have the hardcore outdoorsy person who wants to put it on, right? And REI kind of has to knit to both of those, but their brand also aligns like for the extremist, right? The person that's going to go climb Mount Everest or whatever, and look like that type of diehard, they connect through the values. It's just it's making connections with your audience, and making as a brand connecting with your audience, but also connecting with what's also important to the audience outside of your brand.
Right. And knowing like how to, like, what's the difference between attention and salience, but also how to leverage attention and gaining that attention to then show that connection and to then have your audience highlight that or find it salient. It's like, I think of like Red Bull almost, where Red Bull's a master at drumming up attention, but they're not just doing it for just kicks and giggles, but they're doing things that's reflecting the lifestyle and that's resonating with the audience who enjoys energy drinks and has that lifestyle. And so then they connect with that, whether it's the super high dive thing they do with the swimming or motocross or what, like it's so brilliant the way they do it, where then that attention and that salience almost just starts compounding because those people, now they have Red Bull TV, they have all these awesome channels they do now, where it's just it's compounded, where now they're a media company essentially. Yeah, and they're doing things that
kind of like Vans bringing back the Warped Tour.
Yeah, where it's like, okay, you have music, and that ties in with like
skateboarding.
It's so brilliant, and it works because it's like, oh yeah, those people, of course they enjoy that. Of course they like. That's why you had skate videos like in the 90s and stuff, where you had cool music, cool shots, and just like the lifestyle of it. And those people find that important. They gravitate towards that. So I think nowadays to encourage businesses, and especially small businesses, that it's like not just drumming, up attention, because that's Gary Vee, all those people out there have made it so popular of like, oh, attention's the market, like you have to gain the attention. It's like, that's not true. That's not completely true in the sense of just because you are getting attention doesn't mean it's good attention. It's like doing a pop-up ad. Sure, you could do a pop-up ad like when I go to Forbes or whatever and I get a pop-up ad and then it expands to my whole screen. It's like, yeah, you got my attention, but it's awful. Like,
what was the response?
Yeah, now I'm just frustrated with whatever Jaguar or whoever you are. Like,
I feel inconvenienced.
Yeah, and then I'm trying to find the X, and now it's like, now you're just frustrating me. I was trying to get to the dumb article, and that alone is like, okay, they don't get me. They don't understand why I'm going to Forbes. They don't understand why I'm doing that. I'm not trying to shop for a car right now. And maybe that'll get more intelligent with AI and stuff, where advertising is only going to become more and more personalized. Is that even recently, within the last 2 years, Delta, they rolled out in a couple, like I think it was Denver and a couple of the airports, where they had this massive monitor where you go up and you scan your passport or your phone with your passport on it, and you look up at the screen and you see your information for where you need to go for your gate and the times and whatnot. But you're the only one who can see it. So apparently this thing can hold up to 100 different individuals looking at it, where you can be standing next to someone and you won't see their information and they won't see yours. It's insane technology. You can look up the video, but it's crazy because this does show really that personalization that's going to be coming out more and more through technology in marketing, in the customer experience, in retail, and all these things where prices will change for you. You'll get certain discounts. You'll only see certain information that the other person won't see.
We're just one little tick away from where it was in the movie Minority Report, where he's walking and with facial recognition, identifies who that individual is, and that little billboard, that little freestanding ad space is completely personalized. Maybe has a live video where they're talking to them, telling them, "Oh, Reilly, hey, how you doing? I know you might be interested in this, right?" And you move on to the next one, and then the next person, completely different customized message, all through just AI responding, facial recognition, and optics and technology. I mean, that's where advertising is going to be. So it's, I mean, now is it going to be predictive? Is the AI going to get predictive so it knows what my salient touch points are, and then really hammers in? Like, that would be interesting to see. But we're not there yet.
A decade ago, Facebook was able to, because of certain profile picture changes, patterns in people's posting, they were able to predict if a woman was pregnant, or no, that was Target that did that. Target was able to predict based off shopping behavior if a woman was pregnant. And then Facebook was able to predict if someone was either going to get married to someone or they're going to get divorced. And this is just based off of patterns and that predictive of going, okay, she changed her profile picture, or they aren't, contacting as much or something like that. And it was able to predict that. And so you look at that predictive behavior and going, okay, that all these things, it has to go towards personalization. And we've talked about that before on other episodes, but it's like with technology and applying that to small businesses, going, how do I personalize further? Because the more you can personalize your business and your offering, then that's like niche marketing. The more and more you can do that, the better. And just like in Minority Report, it's like if that ad can speak directly to me, it's a little weird, but it's also very convenient and awesome, because then it's like, oh yeah, that's one thing off my plate. Yeah, I actually do need to reorder that, or my wife did tell me to reorder that and I forgot 5 times. Yeah. But it's almost that convenience and that kind of, what do I find important? What is salient to me? But I think that's where it's all heading. And for small businesses, it's like, okay, you might not have the fancy monitor that's probably a couple $1 million, but you can at least start doing things and looking at your audience and not looking at them as just this broad swath of a demographic, but look at them in their situations and look at them of what are they going to find important right now? Where are they going? What's the season like? What kind of season are they in life as well? Yeah.
Just be, with all things, as you're working on honing your brand, be mindful of stepping outside of your brand.
To be top of mind, you have to get in their mind. And understand them. Put yourself in their shoes.
Yeah.
But thank you for tuning in to another episode of Brandy. We'll be back next week with another round. Cheers.